can now go back to the music and see and hear trajectory of development. So I have a question for Kingsley, actually, because it's on this topic. So I was talking about how Fela kind of eventually, after leaving the US, developed a more, and also by the influence of his mother, developed a more strong point of view. So the music wasn't just about like love. He wanted to say something about where he was from. You know, always we know that he became maybe more political. So I guess for you, Kingsley, the question that I had, and we've actually had this conversation one-on-one in the past, but what are the elements, like how do you find a point of view as an artist? How do you hone that point of view? Where does it come from? And yeah, and then how does it influence your music? And I think I'll bring this question to you as well.
Okay, thanks for the question. So you said, how do I find my point of view as an artist?
Or what was the process for you finding your own point of view as an artist? And then it'd just be interesting to hear your perspective in the context of what we're talking about.
Okay, first of all, I feel like every day is a class. The moment you get out of bed, class has started. You know, so for me, it's like I find my point of view from there. You know, I try to have a story, but I try not to hug it too much, you know, to always like detach from that story, you know. I feel like there's a lot happening around, you know, environment, government, family, you know. I feel like that shapes my point of view as a person. Then as a musician, you know, what I listen to, I listen to a lot of, you know, it's crazy because when I was in law school, I made a very conscious decision to stop listening to Western music. And I kind of like switched back to African music, and I feel like that has shaped my point of view, you know, today. Listening to Salif Keita, listening to Fela, listening to Angelique Kidjo. I feel like, yeah, you know, as a musician right now, I'm first drawn to making African sounds first, you know, before fusing it to everything, yeah.
Yeah, so, sorry. We've talked about this before, and I love that you brought it up. And I guess, making that intentional decision to switch to listening to only, like we've done this, we went on a high life deep dive.
I actually like boycotted, you know, I had to, because I feel like, you know, as a person from this side of the world, you know, it takes a lot, but it also takes so little for you to wake up as a person, you know, because everything tries to distract you from what you should actually be. So I feel like at that time, I kind of just said, you know what, you know, no more Jay-Z for now, no more, yeah, I just kind of like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like Fela is one of the greatest musicians that have come from Africa. And to be a musician in Africa, there's no way you can't study Fela. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, it has influenced my music.
100%. Before we move on, I just want to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Benson Adoni J, one of Fela's former managers. Just want to acknowledge you, sir, and celebrate you. Thank you so much for joining us here, sir. It's a pleasure. So, I have a question for you, and I guess my question for you, especially as a female artist, I was curious to know your thinking and your process when developing how your politics or your points of view infiltrates your music, and some of the things that you choose to speak about in your music. How do you go about that? And maybe has Fela's music, because you shared with me offline that used to play in almost like a Fela cover band, right? So it'd be kind of the same thing I was asking Kingsley, is like, what is your own point of view in your music? How have you come to that point of view? And then maybe the ways that maybe Fela's music has influenced it.
Okay, let me start with my point of view. I think my point of view also is, okay, let me start with the things I choose to sing about. I think usually what I choose to sing about are very introspective. They're already more about speaking to your conscience as a person. So most of the songs I've actually put out are very introspective. They're also very spiritual in a way because I think these are the themes that I've been facing in my life, and that's what I've put into my music. So I would actually say personally, I don't particularly have political music, but the music I make speaks to human experiences, speaks to authenticity as a person, and like I said, also spiritual spiritual things I've experienced. In terms of the music itself now, like in terms of composing the music, I would say that I actually really identified a bit like with Fela when I was looking into his development, because you can tell that he was listening to like a whole range of genres at the time he was developing this Afrobeat music. That's why sometimes I hear some songs and I'm like, wow, that sounds very Afro-Latin jazz. That sounds very, that sounds like blues, that sounds like funk. And I could tell that like he's listening to all these genres and also he's coming from the background of high life, but he's like, okay, I want to have all of these things, but in one thing. And you could actually kind of see that in the trajectory. And that's kind of how I feel sometimes with how I'm experiencing music and forming a point of view, because I also genuinely believe I'm still at the verge of forming my own unique point of view as a musician. But that is inspired by the fact that like right now I listen to the Afrobeat, then I also listen to jazz, I listen to soul, and right now I also listen to electronic music as
you DJ as well.
A DJ as well. And honestly, being a DJ and the music that I like to play, which is minimal, it's electronic music that is made as minimal as possible. Right now, I'm drawing like I don't know what the word, but I'm drawing like almost like a synonym, but that's not the word, between this music that I'm playing and what I'm like, and now recontextualizing Fela's music in my head, because I started to realize actually, as Afrobeat got deeper, you realize that the bass always held its place from the beginning to the end. You realize that the tenor always held its place from the beginning to the end. And the drums, obviously, but, when Tony Allen was playing it, it would be changing, but it would still also hold that groove from the beginning to the end. And it's almost a thing, and I like what Kingsley said about patience, because it's almost a thing where Fela was like, okay, let's strip it back, and what are the roots of this song? What are the basics of this song? This is my rhythm, and on top of this, I'm going to build other things. On top of this bass is going to counteract with the tenor guitar. This tenor is going to counteract with the rhythm. And I'm listening to that and drawing an analogy with the music I'm also listening to, which is electronic music, because it's very stripped back.
And trance-like.
Sorry?
It's trance-like as well.
Yeah, and also trance-like, yes. So, so I guess that's how my point of view is forming, and that's how Fela is influencing that daily. Yes.
The answer. I suppose I should also answer the question myself.
Yes.
As a musician, as an artist. I think, so I was in the panel before, and we were talking about his mother, Fela Kuti, as one of like an icon in Nigerian feminism, and how you cannot not see her influence in Fela's life, right? I think for me, one of the things, one of my points of views that I try to, is a lot about like women's empowerment in my music. And I remember, and I'm sure Mr. Bello will remember this as well, I have this cover I did of Fela's Lady that I stripped it down and played it on my cajon drum, and just kind of like tried to do my own recontextualization of the song. But that song means so much to me because of, what Fela was trying to say. And I think that has been something that I have tried my best in my own music to make sure that I always, and not just embody it in my music. Because one thing that I also really appreciate about Fela, everything that he wrote, he embodied. And because he embodied it, you believed him. So it made what he had to say more valid. Like, if someone says something but they're contradicting in their lived experience, you don't believe what they're saying. And that's what makes music so powerful. The artists that we love and know, they embody their points of view, you know. So I think that's something that I try to do, not just if I'm like, yes, I believe in my power as a woman, I can sing about it, but I try to embody it as well. I think that's something that I kind of learned, I could say indirectly, from Fela as well. So that is my answer. Mr. Bill, I'm going to go back to you because you are, I want to say, an encyclopedia. You know so much.
It can't be an encyclopedia where Uncle Benson Edonije is in the room.
No, yes.
Lemmy Garioko is in the room. And Oguguaf is also in the room.
Very true.
I think it's actually the fact of the importance of music to the protests that Funmilayo Ransom Kuti led in Abeokuta. She actually wrote songs, scabrous, and songs that were sung by market women about the Alake. And some of these songs are actually recorded in, the lyrics of some of these songs were recorded in the Public Records Office of the Colonial Government, in her archives in the University of Ibadan as well. You can find some of these lyrics. And in the new podcast that was made by Obama's company, some of those lyrics, some of those songs were recreated in the segments that relate to Funmilayo and Ransom Kuti. And we tend to think of Fela as maybe in terms of Marxist analysis as the common man with solidarity with the proletariat and everything. But Fela was, in all truth, upper middle class, third generation middle class. So for his mother to compose vulgar songs to dethrone an Alake of Egbaland is some very significant fact that we don't take into account when we think about Fela. Because yes, it's okay for Sandra to say she politicized Fela or she opened his eyes. But if you're talking to someone whose mother also wrote caricatures and scabrous lyrics, then it's like, no, he learned it from home. You know, his father was an intellectual as well. He was radical. He was one of the people who formed the National Union of Teachers. So it's actually, that's where it all comes from. And we tend to forget that when we are seeing Fela as a rebel, anti-establishment figure. It's actually that look. It was in his genes, so to speak.
Yeah, so much for that. Kingsley, I'm going to come back to you. One of the things that I really enjoy about, like, Fela has a lot of live albums, but he used to play live incessantly. Like, he was always playing live. He was testing music live. And I know I've talked about this. I have songs that I have not released, but I will play it live first, and he will get real feedback. And that's why I think even the legacy of public rehearsals and playing your music live, getting feedback automatically, getting an audience connected to your music. And obviously, you have been on stages long before, like, even Cavemen existed. You know, you guys are always Cavemen shout, but you were playing in church and supporting other artists. So I'm just curious to know how that pedigree influences your production and your songwriting. Because with Fela, it was just ingrained in him. He was constantly playing live, and then he could, you know, even some of the choral parts, like you can tell that it was it was bred and written in a very live context as well. So
I feel like I've always believed that music should be participatory. That's how we started making music in the first place, because, we thought that, from church, you find out that, it's always mutual, when the music plays, the audience interacts, I feel like that's what inspired even how I make music, Fela, I feel like his process should be very interesting for those who probably witnessed his studio recording. I'm sure he didn't record alone, like he was always with people. I believe that music is a very big water for community, and recording that way, thinking about community is something that I take as priority, and I've learned, even like you hear Fela's music, like he doesn't sing it alone. Even a verse, you hear like Hans line going with it, like he's always backed up by something, and I feel like it's an important backbone for his music, is that he brings his community along. I'm sure there's like rumor where like I think they paid him like monies up to like $100,000, and he carried everybody on tour. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's the importance of community, and it's so important to bring that into the record. Even for the listener, the listener doesn't feel alone, because like when they hear that kind of music, you just feel like you're part of something. You want to be part of something. You know what I'm saying? So the importance of sense of community in music, bringing that to the studio is like, it can never be overemphasized. Like, so important.
I love that. So I think at this time I want to kind of open up the panel. If anyone has any questions or comments or ideas, I guess leading off this idea of very community-driven dialogue that was happening with this music. Does anybody have any ideas, thoughts, questions? Yeah, Mr. Mc-
I have questions for the older people in the room. It's great that Lemi, Ogugwa, and Benson are in the room. And I would like to ask Lemi Garioku, who was quite close to Fela and was one of people who ran the Young African Pioneers. Am I correct in remembering that you actually have a handwritten score by Fela?
No, you are very incorrect. I don't have any, but I saw many. I never had the kind of audacity to pick one, keep. If you understand what I mean. It was very personal to you. When he's trying to write a new, sometimes he wakes up from Ben sleep and he's inspired. He used to has a notebook, that old primary school exercise book, the one with the blue cover, with the Olympic jumper on the cover. That was actually on that piece of paper that he wrote a gate pass for me, a ticket and visa and Kalakuta and my destiny. So he will write scores. Write the scores. His handwriting is quite shaky. Sometimes it looks like a doctor's handwriting. And so I'm just giving you all this. Yara, I don't get any copy.
Thanks, everyone. I got a question about language in music. And it's interesting because I think that obviously Fela's music was very specific language-wise. Kingsley, when we talk about POV, there's a decision in language you choose to speak. Falana, you the same. And obviously, Ayo, yours is even more interesting because like when I hear your music, like the choice of no language. And I think this idea around music and language, what are your thoughts around it? And if there is any correlation between Yes, the Fela, the premise, which was like why Fela chose to sing in Pidgin.
First of all, thank you for that question. I feel like music, first of all, should be feeling. You know, it should be feeling first because you can know other language, you can know other English, but if you're not translating feeling to somebody, you know, it's not gonna. 95% of music I listen to today, I don't know what they're saying. I feel like I grew up listening to music from feeling, and I also feel like, a song is a word to the musician making it, because in that word you can make the language of that song. I heard a Fela song where he said "kachiri," and I asked somebody who speaks Yoruba, what does that mean? And the person said they don't know what that means. So I feel like a song is a word to the person who makes it, because like you can create your language. We have a song called Bolo Bolo, and whenever we play it across the world, like everybody's tripping for it. But if you ask me what are we saying in the song, nothing. You know what I'm saying? I feel like language sometimes gets in the way.
I guess to add to that, it's interesting because Fela has a massive international audience, and people are listening to his music in all parts of the world. This point that you said, they don't really understand what they're hearing, but they knew that it was charged. They knew that he was saying something. So there's that, and I very much agree with that. And but I also think it's his choice of language that made him interesting in these spaces. But I guess it's bringing it back home. If you sing a song and you're singing the lyrics and you're singing it in a way that you feel like you're speaking about yourself or you're speaking to yourself, I think just deciding to write, it was actually an evolution, because he didn't necessarily start out writing in Pidgin. He evolved to this place because he wanted everyone who hears his music to see themselves in his music. So I get where you're coming from, Papa, when you say like just the choice of language that makes it accessible in a specific way, in a specific context. And that is what kind of made Fela like the, let's say, rise up as a king in Africa from a musical POV and make him so legendary, right? I think music nowadays, even now, is like people want to connect. They want to feel something. So how you say something, oh, this person sounds like me. Oh, this person looks like me. Oh, this person has felt what I have felt. This person has experienced this pain or this frustration or this whatever the feeling is. So I think it's all of those things together. And when you have the perfect storm, what happens is you get a legend. And that's why we're all here sitting down talking about Fela today. Did you want to give an opinion? Not really, language or lack thereof?
I would just say something to the lack thereof, and I would say that I think another added thing to also why Fela was like known by national Africans. As he progressed, most of his songs were much longer, and honestly, like he was saying those words, he was saying those politically charged words, but the music carried the spirit of the words he was saying. So even if you didn't understand the words he was saying, the music carried that spirit, it carried the energy. Like some songs that he had sounded like battles because he was angry when he made them, probably when he made them, and then you can hear it in the music. Also about, I don't know if this is a point, but one thing I noticed that was interesting was, I think from there was a particular point where I noticed that he started to have fun with language when he started to speak, like, songs like Why Black Man They Suffer, those earlier songs. He was definitely commenting on social aspects of life, but he was kind of like straightforward in how he approached it. But then he now started to get to parts where he would say fun things, like there's, for example, Sorrow, Tears and Blood, when he was saying, someone just died, or someone could have nearly died, and then in that same lyric, he now said, someone just, I can't sing, Yeah, someone nearly died, someone just died. For me, I was just like, okay, this is him saying this serious thing, but he's also saying it in almost like a play of words because he's like, and there's songs like equalization of trouser and pants, stuff like this. He's now taking just regular things and crazy demonstration, I think that also added to why people were also captured by what he was singing because he made you like he made you want to lock in because you're like, oh, I want to sing this too, and then when you're singing it too, then you know what he's talking about, and you're like, okay, great. Well, not great. Let's fight. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. To take advantage of the people in the room, I'll ask Ogugwa the next question. As someone who grew up in northern Nigeria, one way, we couldn't go to the shrine every week, like people who are lucky enough to be in Lagos. So after going to the shrine a few times, one realized that people used to make tapes, the mixing desk, and we sort of circulated these tapes around the country. And from these tapes, we knew where Fela's compositions were at the moment. So as the composition changed, you would get a new tape with a new version. Since Ogugwa was Fela's friend, I would like to ask him if we can get any of these unrecorded songs from him.
And that's not a problem now. I'll find something. It's contraband, but still. Just not me go give you a shout.
Can you go to a run through of the songs we can look forward to listening to? A shrine tape, of course.
I'll be better than me. But yeah, those kind of songs that were not Akuna. Yeah, those we can find those.
There's some songs we're looking for, like NNG.
Yeah, you can. Well, if I get on the street, I know who has some music.
Okay.
I will not mention any names here.
Okay. It's reassuring. It's reassuring.
But I just want to address two things that this gentleman was Kingsley. That you mentioned. So you talked about the recording session. So this is what happens. Fela records by let's say rhythm session. They come in, everybody plays that together, like you are playing live. That's how it records. Last session, everybody, all these sessions play together. I've got 6 guys playing at the same time. I always say that Fela was not a musician, he would be a comedian. Very funny, laugh very hard. Because he liked food too. Talk about other things. Okay, cake and ice cream. Like to bench. FYI.
There's a question at the back.
Sorry, I just feel more standing. Good evening. Just want to take the. My question is more to them. I always felt like I should have been there. One of the young people who were alive when I was actually taking people's gist. I think, example of a lifetime experience. Now, we've touched on many things, and I just wanted to comment on them, like the language thing. I happen to be somebody found that app promote them, but Boomplay has like 300 songs of Fela, and I just put it on sometimes, and the whole weekend, 300 finish, and they start again. finished and he started. And his vocabulary is not just Nigerian language. Like, he speaks Twi, he speaks some other, he speaks Ashanti, or at least he spoke those languages in some songs. I'm happy that they're here to correct me if I'm just chatting. But, so I don't, music was his expression, but it wasn't the center. I think he always found something, whether, okay, now we're talking about movement, now we're talking about military coups all over the world. There were songs where he was referencing South America, coups in other parts of Africa, this and that, like things that were not his business, literally, because he wasn't affected. He was a posh kid. Like Trinity, the people who know Trinity know that he was a posh kid, very posh, upper middle class. And again, just to mention, because I do some history, this year is actually the 100th anniversary. Grandfather in the first Nigerian, maybe African, world music. He released in 1925. Ade, his great grandson, 1400. Those are the kind of things that we need to pick on, either we're alive now and watch the videos that he has, something with whatever it is. Because 8 years he lived, such a short time. I mean, I'm my age now, without spilling what it is. I know that 48 years, 50 years is such a short time. And he did all of these things that years after we're still talking about. And definitely, Africans, black people will still be talking. And so, to just close all of that up, my background is architecture. Now, I've heard people pass stories on and say, oh, in those hangouts with Fela, they talked about all kinds of things. They talked about politics, of course, feminism, marriage. That some people even said Fela was the one that gave them their business idea. The particular one I heard where somebody who was the person said the guy was importing stuff. And Fela said, all these things you're importing, you have the raw materials in Nigeria. Just start making your own. And the guy is a billionaire today. Now, I don't know how true that is, so I would like to hear, them just comment on that. I'm trying to be an architect because I still feel like I'm not there yet. Even after like 15 years of studying. But I feel like what Fela did to me, what I want to do to architecture. In school, they teach us Bauhaus, Walter Gropius, all of these. And nobody taught us about, pre-colonial architecture. That's even good. But I found a Fela of architecture. I found Demasomo. Because he did basically what Fela did to music. So I just want to ask that, without rambling a lot. Was there anything relevant to other creative sectors, Fela's conversations, like just gisting randomly? Like if I were in the room and Fela were here and I said, bro, what's up with architecture? What would he say? I just want to hear your feedback.
Okay, my brother, yeah. That's a lot. But it's a lot of Fela. He was such an egalitarian soul, very conscious being. So apart from the musical genius that he gifted with, he was a great human resource manager. Because he had about 80 people living with him in the house. And some people are giving work to. So a lot of street urchins just come in. Akuta was open 24/7. Anybody can meet. And young people possibly had issues with their parents, had to abscond, just come knocking. But being a great human resource, he look at you and enumerate possibly what talent you have or that you have that he can help to inculcate and develop. So he actually calls people by title of their job. Like if you're an electrician in Kalakuta, because electric, and you know he's talking to you. And girls, some of them were dancers, at least about 20 of them dancers. They also are singers, and the ones who, then they have DJs, because they played music 24/7 in Kalakuta on vinyl record, you know. So you hear James Brown, you hear Marvin Gaye, all that, 24/7. So then he has young boys who, some are his bodyguards. Those are in the security department. So, interestingly, you mentioned about architectural adventure or journey. You mentioned, yeah. I would like to relate myself to that paradigm that you just discussed. I met Fela Kuti. My dad wanted me to be an engineer. So I was in secondary school, emphasis, secondary school, because I don't want people to run away with the idea that I studied in upper school, like university. I didn't have any, and it was based on Fela's guidance. So Fela discovered, he saw my talent, was really eager to help me. And one thing that I came in with, Kalakuta, was I was already a Pan-Africanist by birth, by spirit. So the moment I sat with Fela, I started talking. Initially, when we started, relationship, he saw I had that potential. So bring out books, and he loved to read voraciously. So he would bring out books for us. So I brought in 2 other colleagues, Rotimi Kujenyo and Kayode. So we became the Yap Boys. We started the political youth Kalakuta based on what we read from Kwame Nkrumah's books. Young African pioneers, call ourselves. Fela loved acronyms a lot. So it sounded like Yap, like to Yab you, to Lampoon. And so we were very close to Fela. So we shared a lot of things. There are some things personally that I know about Fela that people don't. Sometimes if I say some stories, people find it unbelievable, but that's the kind of paradigm, kind of environment, So for me, as an example, people in my neighborhood appraised me, talent as an artist, and Fela had sanctioned it by giving cover, 1970, that's 51 years ago. I've been designing covers 2 years. I've done over 2,000, over 100 musicians across the world right now. And it's based on the knowledge I gained from the University of Kalakuta. I was in Kalakuta for 4 years. That was my university. So people in my neighborhood started saying, we know you can draw, but you didn't study in school. Okay, go and take the GC. You know the colonial structure that we are in, this education that has kept us down, our minds today, both religion and school. I took the private, I forgot what they call that. When you are not in school, I took the GC anyway, and my result came out. Fine art. I got A1 distinction. So I was so proud, and I said, let me go talk to Fela, mentor. He was also my master, because we studied physics together. I was his acolyte. So I ran to him. I told my guys. So I told Fela, I said, I did this now. I have certification for my art. I said, rather than go to university to study engineering, my dad wanted, I would rather go and study art, fine art. Fela said, let me sit down. Then when Fela tell you sit down, you sit down. So he analyzed his life for me. We all know upper bourgeoisie family. So all the children are supposed to. There were 4 children. Only Fela that didn't do medicine. Know the history of the Kuti family. And so Fela was also supposed to do medicine, but he changed. So he said to me, he studied colonial music, classical music, in Trinity College in the UK. So he got back, and High Life was So every era has. So he needed to fit in, but because of background, the Western education he got in music, so he found himself playing high life jazz. It wasn't very successful initially. It was very tough for him. He couldn't compete with like Rex Lawson, Victoria, all the people who didn't go to. You will get the point now. And he gave examples of some of his schoolmates, like Atalade, Wole Bokno, Sami Akpabot, Akin Ayuba. There are many of them like that. When they got back, they couldn't shake away that colonial vibe. So Fela eventually shook it off after his interview with Sandra. And I remember a brother here mentioning about Sandra and then referring back to Fela's background, that he actually came from that background. So already had it in his gene. But sometimes in life, we need someone to point us to our destiny. Fela was singing typical high life song, just like what most of the Afrobeat stars are singing, the mundane lyrics. But it was Sandra that gingered him to reconnect to his soul and to his destiny. And Fela came back to Nigeria in late 69. 1970 changed the pattern entirely. And the biggest song he ever had, Koku, which was totally not high life. It was fresh and very revolutionary. So he said to me, if he didn't have a strong willpower, Papa Bessie they mentioned that he was very rascally, even though he wasn't at that point. He was working with him. Yeah, Fela was very rascally. He had a very strong willpower. He said if he didn't have a strong willpower, he would have been able to shake away the colonial influence of classical. You understand? I eventually, when we talk about language, mention speaking English intentionally later. And Fela was a great brand ambassador. He branded himself. He created all the paraphernalia around his brand. His clothes were made by his personal tailor. He never bought ready-made. Even his briefs, his pata pant was sewn by his tailor. Loved silk materials. He had all colors. There was a time he went to the UK and he was being interviewed in the hotel room. He's always in his. He was wearing purple. So the white man said, it's strange to see a man wearing purple pants. So that's how Fela was. The Inspector General of Police at that point in time was his friend. That even helped him at some point. He could have even been in more danger. So he was so pleased with the General of Police. And he said, I need to make a special present. And typical Fela, very talented, called his electrician, designed a light box. I'm telling you, 1975, designed a light box. So you press the button and different colors. And followed him Awolowo Road, where the inspector at midnight. So he said, thank you. That's how creative makeup that the girls were making. So people like searches in African Kura people, Kenya and all. So it was a very vast spirit. Very, very vast. And let me round up by a short story about we're so close. He said me like I was his child. I was one of his best friends. I was his youngest advisor at that point in time. And to capital, I was his comrade in Pan-Africanism. That was the advantage. Because most of the other artists, he loved art a lot. And they just come, they didn't share their joy, they didn't know what you want. I understand. That's why I created that movie. It's called a divine collaboration between my art, my visual art, global. Anywhere they study Afrobeat, they package it with the art. And you saw Obama too. And that art is. So that's how the journey is going. So before I forget, I took my result, GC result to Fela. I said, Fela, I mentioned that already. And he sat me down and he compared other colleagues who couldn't shake off the colonial thing. And he said, don't go to university. He said, I've seen your talent on genius. He said, since you love to read,
buy books on art, study all the European masters, pick what you want yourself so you don't lose your. If you go to classes to study art, they'll teach you Italian art, European art history, tell you not be original. And I took that advice, but it was very dangerous advice. In the 70s, not to say I'm not going to. It's not that my dad could send me to you. My spirit just said, support I needed was my mom. So I told my mom was highly spiritual. Meditation, you know, this Aladura something. Next day, my mom said, "You choose not to go." That person, I made that, and I'm very proud today. That's why I was to this event. Me and my wife were just coming from Yaba College of Tech alumni. So my friends that I have not seen for 50 years, we just saw this afternoon, and it was a lovely thing. And I say thank you to Fela, and thank you to myself for listening to good advice. It's important. But we get good advice sometimes. I think I've said it.
And on that note, I just want to say we're wrapping up. Thank you so much. I feel like we're very privileged because what we just had here, like you said, Uncle Emmy's, the privilege of this, the elders in the room giving us first-hand account. So I just want to thank each of one of you individually. Can we give a round of applause, please, for Lemi Gayoku? A round of applause for Ogogoa as well here. And Mr. Benson, Adonije as well. Another round of applause for him too. Can we keep the applause going? We're very, very fortunate right now. It's like living history. And even just thank you so much for being so willing to share with us. I've been lucky. I get stories like this often. Yeah, I'm very lucky, but I'm just so grateful that we're able to share it. And thank you. Oops, my phone. Sorry, I'm clumsy. Thank you so much, Kingsley, Mr. Bello, and myself. Thank you so much, obviously, to all the organizers of the Afrobeat Rebellion. The exhibition is going on to the very end of the year, to December. There's music coming. I'll be back soon for that as well. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the exhibition. Thank you so much.
Now, we have one word for the underground spiritual game. Everybody, you say ayakata. Everybody, ayakata.